Hello and welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are watching in the world. Thank you for joining us for this IHEM and HEFMA Developing the Healthcare EFM Workforce joint webinar. My name is Paul Fenton and I'm the President of IHEM and also a Director of Estates and Facilities at East Suffolk and North Essex NHS Foundation Trust. This afternoon's session will be presented by Lord Anthony Young of Norwood Green, prominent apprenticeship ambassador, Wayne Carr, Director of Estates and Facilities at Choice, Simon Dennis, Apprenticeships and Procurement Lead at Salisbury's NHS Foundation Trust, Jeff Neild, who is the HEFMA Vice Chair, and Monira Kayosh, who is Project Support Officer with IHEM. The title of this session's presentation is Apprenticeships and the Wider Workforce Support. We'll be using the questions function to take questions from the audience. This can be found at the top right-hand side of your screen. We won't have time to use the audience hands up facility, so please post your question to the organizer and our speakers will answer as many questions as there is time for at the end of the session. Please note that a certificate of attendance will be sent to all of those who watch the live webinar to its entirety. We request that no part of this webinar is reproduced and published in print or in any other format. So at the moment, we are just trying to get Lord Anthony Young to join us. We're having a few technical difficulties. So what we're going to move directly to Wayne Carr to commence this presentation. So at this point, Wayne, I'd like to hand over to you to commence the session. Thank you.
Many thanks, Paul. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Wayne Carr, as Paul noted, and I'm Director of Estates and Facilities for Choice in Sunderland, and I'm also a Chair of the Northern and Yorkshire Assessment Centre, which has been providing apprentices to the NHS for over 25 years and continues to do so via Eileen Bales and the team up here in the North East. And we certainly had a vested interest in this new engineering specialist technician standard. So I'm going to take you through a short presentation. It's going to be about a hugely important piece of work that the team have completed in regard to that dedicated standard for apprentices in the NHS. Next slide, please. So why was there a need for this specialist standard? Well, there are a number of reasons. We believe that the field is very specialist and needs to be focused on the NHS and delivering that highly skilled workforce. It was developed by Eileen and the team to meet those specific standards because we felt she had huge experience around that and perfectly placed to do so. And other standards were available, but they didn't quite do the job, to be honest, and had to be manipulated or interpreted to give that specialist NHS feel, and that's not ideal. And this standard also includes estates and medical equipment and medical engineering services. So it was really important to get those two functions picked up within the standard. Next slide, please. So whilst we clearly established the need, we needed to work out how that was going to be developed and what would that look like. So we developed it as a core and option standard, and it could be used and applied right across the full set of NHS organisations. That wasn't a problem, but it also went out to all the NHS organisations nationally to get their feedback and full consultation. Really important to engage people to find out what the actual needs were and making sure those standards pick those up. And there were two options in there. One is option one about medical devices technician, and the other was around the healthcare estates technician. Next slide, please. We felt the core and options was the best and most appropriate method to take the standard forward. It avoided the two separate standards for the two engineering disciplines, the medical engineering and the healthcare estates engineering, because some of the core training is exactly the same. So we didn't want to duplicate that core aspect of that. And also it negated the need for two separate standards. And what we thought was absolutely fundamental of this was making the standard, making the patient at the core of all of that, both in relation to patient safety and ensuring service continuity of a sustainable workforce. We all know within our various estates departments that the workforce is of a certain age. We've got, certainly in my team here in Sunderland, we've got a very, very high percentage that is over 50 and over 55 in some cases. So it's really, really important that this drives a sustainable workforce and give us the core standards to deliver that in a really safe patient environment. Next slide, please. So again, we talked about the two options. One thing to note on option 2 was that the estates technician gives the multi-skill option. So it gives you more flexibility with the workforce. You could work safely both electrically and mechanically. But we just thought in this day and age, lots of organisations are looking at the multi-skilling aspect of their workforce. So again, option 2 gave you that multi-skilling option. And what we talked about there is the recommendation for the programme. Eileen and the team felt 48 months was the right time for that, but nothing less than 42 months. Anything less than 42 months we feel would be a compromise on the quality of the training required, and also that less of that duration wouldn't give you the high quality apprentice coming out there for your tradesmen at the end of that programme. So we really felt 42 was the minimum, but ideal is 48 months, and that's where we focus. Next slide, please. So where are we now? What's the funding band for the standard? Very important. And what's the current position? So we're awaiting official ministerial sign-off for the funding band, and we think that's just a procedural only. We've had the green light, if you like. That's just waiting to go through the relevant processes. It's anticipated that the programme will come out at 24k, which is a slight reduction on the current funding, but again, that's where it's being banded at the moment. One point of note for everybody is around of the 20k funding that's been allocated, 3k has to be deducted for the endpoint assessment, EPA that's in there, so actually leaves 21k available for the actual training delivery. So you'd have to work within those fundamental aspects at the moment, but again, that's where we are. And when the sign-off is received, we can officially start to register learners, and it will go live on the IFA website. At the moment, the standard indicates in development, but once we've gone through what we've talked around ministerial sign-off, then that will become live and the standard can be accessed. Thank you very much. And that's it from me. I believe I was handing over to Simon, I think.
Thanks, Wayne. I'm avoiding a death by PowerPoint for all of you. Wayne's information there was absolutely fantastic, so no doubt you're scribbling that down. And I'll give you a very quick whistle stop of actually how this fits in with apprenticeships, and also what we're doing to make sure there is provision for this fantastic new standard. So to start off with a couple of myth busting, what is an apprenticeship? It's a job and it has training embedded in it. That it's a job bit is really important. It's not a training scheme. It's not a sort of dipping into a career. It is a proper job during which people have up to 20% protected learning time as a minimum, and obviously can have more. And that may be a college attendance or time with their training provider. And the rest of the 80%, or however the split falls, is on the job training, where they document their experience, their projects they've worked on, and their competencies, all working towards, as Wayne mentioned, the end point assessment, which is the very last piece of the programme. And that's a check that all the knowledge, skills and behaviours of any apprenticeship has been embedded by the learner, and then they're able to practice these in the real world environment. In terms of the benefits of apprenticeships, for employers, the apprenticeship is funded through the apprenticeship levy. If you have a pay bill of more than £3 million, you're having 0.5% of the value of your pay bill over 3 million already deducted by HMRC. That goes into a training levy pot called your apprenticeship fund, and that can be used to then pay for courses only. It doesn't pay for salaries, travel time, that sort of thing. It's purely the educational element. The good news is, if you're running low on the amount in your pot, or you're an organisation that doesn't qualify, levy can be transferred from other organisations, and we see that happening quite often. They don't have to be health organisations. North West Ambulance have money transferring into them from Royal Mail for their paramedic programme. Similar is happening in London from Deutsche Bank into London Ambulance. And the NHS itself, where large trusts aren't spending all their levy, quite often support primary care and smaller providers within their healthcare economy. The apprenticeships have been designed by the employers. That's the really important bit. And the success of Wayne's programme for many years with Wayne and Eileen up in the Northeast has really brought so much knowledge into this particular new standard that again, it very much is employer-led. And the data from Apprentices is clear. Apprenticeships have been around in this current levy-funded format now for 5 years. And the data is really clear. The retention is better, they stay with you longer. During COVID, the apprentices have responded absolutely magnificently to the changes that COVID has brought us as an NHS workforce. So it's already funded. You've got the money coming in through that way. That's the 24,000 that Wayne was talking about, assuming that is the final sign-off, and that can be gifted and moved across the system. Where do we come in from Salisbury? Well, Salisbury are the largest provider of procurement of apprenticeships for the NHS. We work alongside Health Education England and NHSEI in making sure that there is quality, and that's always the key word, provision of programmes for employers across the country. The apprenticeship levy part only applies in England. If you're watching in Scotland or Wales, then there is a different method and Northern Ireland of delivering apprenticeships within those devolved administrations. So for England, the plan is we will be putting out a procurement together, which IHEM and HEFMA are very much involved in the core requirements within, and that will give training providers the opportunity to respond, saying how they will deliver the standard. Obviously, the standard is set, that has the knowledge, skills and behaviours embedded, but there's a lot of flexibility we're looking for about how they deliver it, how they look after you as employers. There's a mentorship involved in apprentices, so normally the line manager of the apprentice and how they're supported. So we're looking for all that to be embedded. That'll be going out during June, and hopefully the roadmap from that, as we've done with other professions, will be a number of providers, because we're looking, or we're hoping there'll be significant numbers coming through this apprenticeship. And we will therefore have a map, hopefully, of regional delivery. So you won't be looking at moving people all over the country, although actually post-COVID and during COVID, we saw a lot more move to online supported learning. And that supported learning bit is key. I'm not talking about a sort of correspondence course where they never talk to their assessor or to their tutor. It's all very much supported through. So the amount of travel, obviously, that people have been doing to learn. But in a particularly hands-on profession like this, we would expecting the training providers to be coming out to the employer, to the apprentices' place of employment, and to really support them all the way through the programme. Once we've done that, you'll then have a menu of providers that you'll be able to call off directly. It stops that horrible heart-sinking moment when your local procurement team say, no, that's really good, but how did you tender it? And you suddenly have to think, oh, we haven't. So that will all have been done for you. And we currently manage through Salisbury around about 500 million of levy spend on behalf of employers. So I do like to think we know our way around this a little bit. But it's the key innovations, and this is why it's so good to have HEFMA and IHEM involved again, because that way we can really reflect a programme that you as employers know will deliver what you're needing. That's enough from me. I think I'm handing over to Jeff. So he's looking at a different screen. Hopefully Jeff is here. Or whoever I'm handing over to is here. I'm sure people have had enough. Jeff, welcome into Illusion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I should be accompanied by Manira as well, so I'm hoping she's going to join us as well. I can hear her talking in the background.
Hi.
There we go. Hi, Manira. Can we have the slides, please, Gemma? I believe we're going to try and do something really technical and wizardry here, and Manira's going to do a live demonstration. Yes, thank you. And welcome to the session that talks about the career route map, which has been heavily showcased during the day, and really appreciate that support that we've seen for the career route map. Just to give a bit of background on this, this is something that started as a concept when HEFMA were putting together their 2015 strategy through to 2020, and this is something that came out of the workforce work stream, but got to a stage where it was developed but not turned into anything that was usable, and the team at IEM picked up on this, and we've combined our resources. And I've got to say, Manira and Melissa have done a fantastic job along with their graphics team of bringing together an idea that we had for a long time into something that's usable and live. I want to discussed a bit of a myth that came from John this morning, and don't like to undermine my chair live and publicly, but John talked about this being a work in progress, and I think I'd question that and actually say what this is organic. This is something that will never ever be finished because it's going to be constantly developing, and we need to be mindful of that as things change, as roles change, as the world changes, things are going to develop, and we've got some planned phases of development which myself and Menira are going to talk about. But this will never be finished. This is something that's always going to be a work in progress, as John called it. But that organic development, that ongoing, what do we need to add in? What do we need to alter? What do we need to amend? So really just wanted to talk about that. So it's live now. It looks fantastic. It's dual branded, which is great because it is a partnership between the two organisations. And really, I'm excited about the fact that we've got this off the ground and it's now a really successful tool. Could I have the next slide, please? I really wanted to show where this this career route map fitted in terms of the 6 key strands of workforce that we talked about this morning and this afternoon. It helps with development. You know, we've just heard from Wayne about apprenticeship, the apprenticeship that he's developing specifically, and Simon on the broader range of apprenticeships that are available. But this really does help with people in role and people who are interested in coming into the service, looking at where can I go with this and what development do I need and what you know, where can I target my development. And it's great to see that we're getting some very specific training that is targeted at health and social care providers of E&F, not just the generic versions of it. And I think the example I'd probably give there is portering. There's an apprenticeship dedicated to portering, but it's very much been jumped on by the hotel trade, and it's very much about moving suitcases and helping people to rooms and back of house type portering there, rather than the sort of portering that our teams do, which is very much front and centre, and some of the more unsavoury jobs we have to do, like taking bodies to the morgue and things like that. So that we do need specific apprenticeships which are targeted at our workforce and not just generic ones. It helps with visibility. We heard from Sam Hay on the session that I chaired previously about people understanding what roles are available in the NHS and how they can look at joining that, whether that be a first careerer, the sort of people that the Apprentices Trust are working with, or whether this is somebody who's been made redundant because of COVID and has never thought of joining the NHS because they're not a doctor or a nurse and they think that's the only roles available. It helps them to see what sort of roles are available and how they can access those roles. It increases our diversity in terms of, that we get more people looking at to join the workforce who are from different backgrounds. And as I said previously, that's not just about ethnicity or gender, that's from a wider range of backgrounds and a wider range of diversity as well. So it helps with all of those. And that becomes, as you can see on the right hand side there, part of the retention tool. And actually, we're also hoping that as this goes on, it'll also become part of the remuneration package as well, that we can start to see where our roles do match and don't match with market rates. Can I have the next slide, please? So this is the career route map. I'm going to hand over to Menira because she's going to go live with this now. And she's going to actually demonstrate the career route map and take us through a working example. So over to you, Menira.
Hi. Okay, so I'm just going to get Gemma to share the screen with you. So we're going to go straight through to our website in a second. Okay, so if we scroll up, so this is our career route map, and what we've done is split the roles into 5 paths. So we'll have estate management. So if we go past the apprentice bit a second, so we've got estate management, we have facility management services, we've got capital projects, we have leadership and admin, and then we have specialist roles. So we've done that so we can then have different jobs in them areas. So it's easier for someone to come on, have a look at the roles in an area that interests them, and then see what further progression there is and the variety of roles. So what you're able to do is hover over the icons, and if you see at the bottom there's some dots. So what we've done here is if you see it will take you to the order. So if you want to work your way up, and it's sort of, you can see where your next stage up is in your career, there might be a different job role that you'll go into. So for an example as well, some roles, so I'm going to use on specialists, we've got an environment and energy team. So if we click into that role, we're then going to have a table content on the side. So here you can see a range of jobs in that area. So some of the icons will have things behind it. And as Jeff touched on, this is a dynamic tool. So it will constantly be evolving as we go on, and things will get added into, if there's anything, we're open to feedback. You know, we want to add as many roles as possible. But as a start for 10, we've been working in the background to put on key roles. And then, yeah, so hopefully we can add more as time goes on. So, yeah, so then obviously if we go back to the apprenticeship path, which you might have saw at the beginning. So we've included this path. So this kind of links in. So obviously I'm the STEM ambassador for IHEAM, and I'm still going into schools, and I've still got a school program. Obviously at the moment I'm not able to go in, so I'm looking at online resources and doing online event. But what this tool will help do is, where we have that apprenticeship path, it will emphasize the importance of promoting STEM school subjects that can lead into the EFM profession and raise awareness. So I'll be able to use this tool in the schools and be able to show students and young people how they can develop in a career, but also it will bring to life the members coming in and doing career talks alongside me. So they're going to be in that job route map, a career route map. And it will highlight the different job roles in a one-stop shop. Okay, also we're going to go into the, as an example of one of what you'll see, we're going to go into project manager role. Just going to get this one up. Okay, so as you click in, this is what you'll see. You'll see the overview. And as we touched on earlier in the first session, there is a touch on NHS banding, and this is an example. So obviously we do have a disclaimer, so it will be different in different trusts, but it's just as a baseline to give someone an idea roughly of the banding of that particular job. And then also we scroll down, you'll see formal qualifications and education and training required, essential skills, and then experience. And yeah, the disclaimer's at the bottom. So I'm going to hand back over to Jeff to explain about what's next for us on this career route map.
Thanks, Manira. Just wait for the slides to come back up. Whilst the slides come back up, there was a question asked on the very first session this morning about the bandings that we're showing and whether they are aligned with national standards, etc. And we've tried wherever possible to align these to national standards, but we've always got to be mindful that people, we've got a very flexible workforce, and some of our teams take on multiple roles. And just give you an example, when I was head of facilities at the trust, I had a role that combined waste management, car parking and transport, because I had a guy who had all of those things in his background. He had all the qualifications required, and that came out at a certain band. Now you'd never have that as a job description, as a single job description, but you know, that might, some of those bits might get added on to somebody's job role to give a different banding. So we have, as was said this morning, we have got a disclaimer on the bandings that they are an indicative band only and not an absolute. In terms of where this goes, again, this is that difference between work in progress and organic and the development plan. We've got the basis of the programme now, so we think we've identified the majority of roles within the career route map, and we've put them in the relevant work streams. And as we say, some of those have sort of been grouped into job families because there's a bit of flexibility around that. The next stage is that what we're going to start to do is look at the qualifications and aligning the qualifications. So what qualifications do you need for that role? And there's already some description of that in the narrative, but it's just to do a sweep of that just to make sure we've captured that, and particularly lining that up with the work that Simon and his team are doing on available apprenticeships, because apprenticeships are available at every level, right through from first job right through to very senior management. So start to knit the two pieces of work together that Simon's team are doing and Munira and Melissa are doing on the development of this this tool. So that'll be the next stage. And then once we've got that, we're then looking at, well, who are the training providers? So I live in, say, let's take for example Bolton, and I'm an electrician at one of the trusts up in the northwest, and I've seen that I want to become a supervisor. I can see what apprenticeship or leadership qualification I need to do. Where can I do that? So that's about which training providers do IEM and HEFMA actually sponsor or recognise, if you like, or endorse, and do they provide something locally? And I think this morning there's a question asked about from the floor about what about accessing training locally and apprenticeships locally. And that's something that we're really mindful of. It's not just about having a great scheme tucked away in one corner of the country. We want something that's available nationally with training providers who meet that standard and work within the apprenticeship levy framework prices, and hopefully available through Simon's team, so that we get rid of all the issues around procurement. So that's going to be a next section. So that's about training providers and endorsement of those. And then the next step that we see is about, well, actually, you know, I've been made redundant from a local biscuit factory. I'm a fitter by trade. I've suddenly been woken up to the fact that, you know, I can go and work for the NHS or in health and social care in the wider sense. And I live in Doncaster. What jobs are available there? So the idea is then we're going to try and link through available jobs through to people searching for types of jobs. So you'll be able to click on and say, great, I'm interested in this job. It's got the right, I've got the skills. It's got the right salary expectations, development opportunities that I can, you know, that I'm interested in. I live in this area. Are there anything available? So you'll be able to click on there, and that'll be the next stage. So it will be a link through from the career route map to track and NHS jobs, depending on which one your trust use. So we've got some really exciting developments. This is the next 18 to 24 months. This isn't something we can do overnight. We are working on this on top of our day jobs and working in a very busy environment. So it's taking the time out with people like myself, Munira, Melissa, Cliff Howes and Kay Mulcahy to work on this in the background and take this on. But really, some really exciting developments. And as I say, this is it's an organic tool, and it will carry on. It'll be like the fourth bridge. It will never get finished. We'll always be improving it. We'll always be tinkering. We'll always be trying to make it better and more useful and interactive. Next slide, please. Oh, I think that could be the last slide. Yes. Any questions? So I believe, Paul, are we handing back to you?
Thanks, Jeff. No, I'm very pleased to say that Lord Young is able to join us following some technical difficulties a little earlier. So I'm hoping that I can hand over now to Lord Young. So Lord Anthony Young joins us. He is a prominent apprenticeship ambassador. So we're pleased to welcome him to this afternoon's session presentation. And without further ado, I'll hand over to Lord Young for his part of this afternoon's presentation. Lord Young.
Right, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Right, great, okay. Okay, well, I'm really pleased to address your conference, and thanks to your Chief Executive, Peter Sellers, for giving me the opportunity, and also Minora and Gemma for their technical assistance. It proved to be a bit more difficult than we thought. Just a little bit about me. I'm an ex-telecom apprentice. When BT was called the GPO and transistors were in their infancy, we had no mobiles, no internet. You might ask the question, how on earth did we survive? Well, I haven't got time to go into that now, but we managed by a variety of means, and of course landlines were far more important. I suppose text started to be around in those days, and telegrams were still flourishing. I'm an ex-trade union leader, and I'm now an apprenticeship ambassador. Now we're living in very challenging times, and I'm pleased to say, as we all know, that the NHS has risen to that challenge. And I suppose the interesting thing addressing your conference on the estate management and facilities is that it was an area where perhaps many people externally would have had no idea how important that was to the running of the NHS, as as a number of speakers have said, people tend to focus on doctors and nurses, not realizing that without the backup that you provide, it just wouldn't function. And we've seen what happens in India when some of those facilities management aren't available. So I was really pleased to look at your leadership strategy and your career development, and the way you were focusing on diversity and flexibility. I think they're really important in terms of attracting people into the workforce. And even more pleased to see that you've just had a new apprenticeship standard produced. And as I think the last speaker said, some of the more generalised standards aren't really appropriate for what you provide. So that organic chart that you said gave people access to all the career opportunities, which was astonishing in my view. And I'm glad you said that it was organic and that it was flexible. I think what we've seen currently in terms of the apprenticeship levy is that the concept was right. I think it focused people on employers on apprenticeships, but it's certainly got its shortcomings. And we know that it's up for reform now, and I think that's right. I was glad to see that you've got an active policy of transferring your excess levy along to other employers. My concern really about apprenticeship is that I think that the only way they can grow is by growing the numbers that we need, is by the development of small and medium enterprises. And when I say small, I mean the very small ones. If we don't get those people enthusiastic about taking on apprentices, then I don't think we're going to get the volume that we need. So that's a message that I'm giving to this government, that we need to reform it. And it was interesting when I saw one of the other speakers referring to the cost of providing the endpoint assessment. That's another challenge. So I'm certainly relaying those messages back to government. And in terms of getting young people and perhaps people who are a bit more mature, shall we say, I was really pleased to see that Menora was a STEM ambassador, going into schools and colleges and saying, look, there are some great careers in the NHS, because it's absolutely vital. And I think the tide is turning, that young people are beginning to realise that there are alternative career paths that are available to them, that they don't have to go to university. It's not an either or choice. An apprenticeship is a great choice. They're getting on the job experience, they're earning while they're learning. And that, I think that message is being now gradually getting across in schools. But the best people to pass that message on are people like Menora. Peer-to-peer is the best influence in my view. So I can, in my contribution to your conference, I can only wish you continuing success. And if there is one other message that I want to give to government about the health service, is if it has a weakness, it's adopting best practice throughout the service. So if you look at the National Health Service, if you look at even inside various hospitals, you can see the best and the worst. And you can't help wondering why it is that we're not adopting best practice. So the pandemic has given us a lot of opportunities to understand why patient records need to be digitised, why the best practices in some trusts need to be picked up by others. And so I'm hoping that that's a message that the government is going to be conveying to the NHS, that I want to see more money going in, but I want to see that money targeted where it can have the best impact. So thank you once again for giving me the opportunity to address your conference, and I wish you every success in the future. Thank you.
Many thanks, Lord Young, for your contribution. Thank you very much indeed. And I think just to take a couple of your points out, I don't think you would have much disagreement with anyone on this call or attending this seminar with regards to, or webinar, with regards to ensuring that the NHS gets the fair share of money that it needs to develop its workforce, both in EFM and in other areas. And I think certainly looking at your comment with regards to best practice, I think there are a number of examples of best practice, but I do think you're absolutely right. There's probably a lack of a standardized approach in the way of best practice used across all trusts. And I would absolutely endorse some standardization around all of those areas, but particularly in both the recruitment, retention, apprenticeship schemes and others that we try to endorse within EFM. So many thanks for your contribution. Many thanks, Lord Young, for your presentation, and also to Wayne, Simon, Jeff and Manira. If you have any questions for our speakers, please continue to post them now. We've got a few that have come in, which I'll read through in a moment. Whilst you're doing that, if you can remember just to visit the HEFMA and IHEAM websites, or indeed the NHSEI Collaboration Hub for any regular updates. I'm going to go to our questions now. If I could ask our speakers to turn their cameras on so that we can see all of you. Thank you very much. So the first one comes from James Clark. I'm going to head this one towards your way, Jeff. The question is around the career route map. And this looks brilliant for someone who struggles to see a future path in EFM. Do you think that some person specs are too detailed and mean that NHS EFM is out on talent that are put off by applying? E.g., he states essential criteria that sometimes people could be trained in, rather than it being essential to be appointed into that position. Jeff, if you could take that one, please.
Yeah, thank you, James. And I think that I always love it when people ask a question that's around a pet subject of mine. I fully agree that I think in the NHS we shoot ourselves in the foot so many times by wanting somebody who has only ever done the job before, rather than has a potential to do the job. And I think, we've really got to look at those job descriptions and say, what is essential and what's desirable, what could we, as you say, develop people into, because all we're doing by must have 20 years experience in working in a similar environment is stealing staff from each other rather than bringing new people into the industry. There's a lot of people who have got really, really transferable skills. We've got people who've worked from the forces who are massively trained, very, very highly skilled, and used to working in the sort of no compromise environment that we have to work in, where you don't have the option to stop the service whilst you sort things out, because the forces don't have that option in the same way that we don't. But we must have previous health experience, must have this and essential requirements for this. And we really do, yes, absolutely shoot ourselves in the foot. They do need revisiting, and I think this is where a conversation with your HR business partners when you're going out to advert about where you can be flexible with certain things on the job description to make sure that you get the best chance of getting the best people. Again, we talk about diversity as being one of our key drivers, and if we've got a very undiverse workforce at the moment, and then we only specify that we want people who've got experience of working in our workforce, we're never going to diversify. We're never going to change the shape and size and look and feel of that workforce by just fishing in the same pond. So absolutely, James, fantastic question, and yes is the answer in short.
Thanks, Jeff. And I think, James, I would say I would endorse what Jeff has said. And in fact, I think history tells us that when you look at some of the essential criteria that's on job descriptions, actually they can be exceeded in other areas by, in a way, not meeting that essential criteria. I used to use an example of my estates operations manager who retired a couple of years ago, 40 years service. He knew the site like the back of his hand, quite frankly. I think if you were to look at the essential criteria required for his post on paper, he simply wouldn't be qualified enough. The reality of it is that actually he was probably overqualified for that position for the years of service that he had got across the site. So I think it's always an interesting debate. And I think the word here is always or equivalent, isn't it? You know, it's essential criteria or equivalent as can be proven. So, but it is essential that we capture that talent which is out there and bring them into the NHS. And even if it does mean working with them on that essential criteria, then there is a way of navigating that, I'm sure. So a couple of questions.
Paul, could I add? Sorry, Paul, I was going to say, could I add a little real world example to that, which might help people? And it's come out of COVID, actually. And we've worked with a number of trusts who have airports within their catchment area. And obviously aviation has been decimated over the past year as an industry. We've had some incredible people coming through. Cabin crew have come through to come onto a nursing apprenticeship because they have obviously the civil aviation first aid, but crikey, if you can, as one of them actually said to me, if you can handle 300 drunk people coming back from Malaga, then ED on a Friday night has got nothing that will worry me at all. And it is all those transferable skills. And one of the great things that a lot of trusts now are saying that before they recruit into a post, the recruitment team actually have to justify why they can't recruit it as an apprenticeship post. So where you've got those sort of state operations managers roles, etc., you can use that through the apprenticeship route because you're bringing people in, not looking at what qualifications they come in with, but what they'll have at the end of the program that you're putting them through. And that's the real strength of even things like the senior leaders that, you know, it's apprenticeships in estates is not just related to estates apprenticeships, if you see what I mean. There's all the leadership, management, the development, everything else in there as well, and it's about creating that sort of rounded individual. But absolutely, it's keeping them loyal, and that really works well through the route.
Yeah, absolutely agree, Simon, and a really good point made there. So thank you for that. So a question actually to Wayne and perhaps Simon as well. Will the apprenticeships be available to all healthcare organisations, including the private sector? And that's a question from Martin Stanway.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it goes right across the board. We've actually, again, in the Northeast, we've supported with apprenticeships some of our PFI providers there locally. So yeah, this is open to anybody that's delivering those services. Yeah.
And again, yeah, to back up that, any apprenticeship is available to any employer. There's all you've got to do is make sure that your employee has an employment contract that matches the length of the apprenticeship they're doing, and you're paying at least the apprenticeship national minimum wage. But any apprenticeship, yeah, absolutely. And as we sort of touched on earlier, if you haven't got a levy pot, then one of our team at Health Education England, who works regionally with that, will find you some levy pot to pay for it. Don't worry about that part of things.
I think the only other thing I would add, Paul, would be clearly you've got to be working in the correct environment to meet the required elements of the standard. So if you haven't ticked those boxes and performed those skills and being able to evidence that, then clearly you're going to struggle at the endpoint assessment. But given that you're in that environment we're talking about there, it should be no problem.
Okay, thanks Wayne, thanks Simon. I'm going to just stay on the apprenticeship theme at the moment. Question from Andrew Rogers: is the 42 to 48 month apprenticeship fully approved? If so, where is the setup to deliver this currently? And also, is there an agreed syllabus for review?
So the document, the new standard, will contain all the core skills and elements. So that will be in there. People download that and have a look at it when it's available. That details what that goes into. The delivery is the one we've talked about. Now, whether that's through a provider, hence we're in the Northeast, we deliver that ourselves through Eileen Bales and the team, and we monitor and manage that. How you go about it can have very different ways, shapes or form, and we're certainly advising some other trusts around the region, and Eileen and myself have spoken to them about how they may want to look to set that up and how that works, whether it's externally or internally. So there are a number of models, Paul, that they can deliver that. It's just finding out, it would be dedicated on the number of apprentices you see is going through your organisation or your trust, and how you want to deliver that. Those are probably the two key factors of whether you manage that yourself or you subcontract that out to somebody who delivers that on your behalf. So that would be the key points for me.
Okay, thanks, Wayne.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you have a look on the Institute for Apprenticeships website, so literally just Google Institute for Apprenticeships, It's healthcare engineering specialist technician is the standard. It's 0950. If you pop the number in, or any words like that into the search box for apprenticeships page, it will bring you up the occupation summary, the endpoint assessment summary, the knowledge, skills, behaviours, and all the learning out. So there's loads of that detail in there about the apprenticeship standard if you want to have an early look. And as Wayne said, that part is all approved because it's published.
Okay, thanks, Simon. And actually, we'll stay with you as well, Simon. It's a question from Melissa Glass. Will the NHS use some of those real-life examples that Simon has identified to create awareness? Perhaps something IHEM and HEFMA can help with. The aircrew was a good example.
Absolutely. I'm going to plug another website now, which is Healthcare Apprenticeship Standards Online. It's a Health Education England website, but it's not limited to nursing. It's run with our partners at Skills for Health, but again, it's not related purely to health. There's loads of case studies and things like that on there, but I'm sure Paul and Peter and the team at IHEM will put some of those examples together when we promote this one, when we've got provision organised as well.
And just to let you know that as part of the work we've been doing on the workforce with various partners, one of the requests we had through Health Education England was around case studies that they could use. And I know we have passed one or two over to them for them to turn into case studies. There's a fantastic one on there about a guy who got made redundant very late in his career and thought he'd never work again, who became a courier driver for a trust. And there's a really sort of heartfelt story on there about how he's found his niche working for the NHS. So as Simon said, there's some really, really good case studies on there, and the more we can add, they're always looking for these because they like to refresh them. So please just keep them coming through, and we can get them passed on to Health Education England.
Thanks, Jeff. Really, really interesting, and I think just to sort of take some of those comments as well, and some of those case studies. So my boss. My chief exec started off as a porter, and I think he's probably not going to thank me for this, but I think is ranked something like 14th or 16th of the top 100 chief execs in the country. Just sort of looking at that example, he very rarely shares that, but when he does, he has shared it with those who are starting with us, and I think does somewhat inspire the careers of those people, particularly as they're embarking upon their career, about the art of the possible. And I think taking Lord Young's example earlier around the apprenticeship within the old GP Telecom XBT or old BT area, and I can talk like that because I come from an electricity board background as an apprentice with East Electricity, so I can certainly work, give that as an example. And when I refer to sort of my time as an apprenticeship or serving that apprenticeship, I think the discipline that you learn, the respect, the probably deeper view and understanding of some of those systems and infrastructure that you may get, has really held me in good stead. And I think, although we've got 2 or 3 more questions to go through, I'd just like to pose a question of my own, really. And apologies, I'm probably going to pick on Wayne because he looks maybe more of the culprit here, and maybe Lord Young. But do you think there's ever maybe a stigma attached to being in a position as heads of estates or directors of estates or whatever else, where you've served an apprenticeship rather than going through a university route? Perhaps I could ask you, Wayne, and then perhaps Lord Young, if I may ask for you to give me your reply.
So I think, thank you, Paul, and I'm heavily biased on this one, having again been actually an apprentice of the scheme that I now chair, which is an absolute honour for me to come full circle. I'm with you on that point. I think what it brings you is from that day one, it brings you how the service runs, You're in there seeing how everything goes around the whole of the hospital. Your training is embedded around that, and it just gave me as personally such an opportunity then at every level after that to then go through my various roles of having that start embedded that I got as an apprentice, understanding and liaising as you do at the time with every level, from domestic supervisors out there when you're doing your work for access and things like that. It just brings your customer skills, and then working towards that after that around your technical skills and supported in your degree and master's degree as I was. I personally think it's an absolute attribute that stands you in good stead when you go through your career. And again, we're biased in the Northeast, and we've got 3 serving directors of estates in the Northeast who were products of the scheme as well, and many, many more in between, as you talk about heads of estates, operational estates managers, senior estates managers. What I would say as well, though, Paul, is to think that that's not for everybody. We get that there, and you've got people who want to develop and do it. I think certainly back from my time, and we're trying to get better at it now, probably that career path development wasn't something I was aware of when I became a tradesman, and that was made aware at a later date. So we're trying to make that aware from everybody coming in, that it may not be the path for you, but just look at some of the opportunities that do exist and what you can do within the NHS and the health service around being those roles that we've talked about, those senior management roles. So yeah, I'm absolutely biased. I think the apprenticeship gives you the ideal and perfect start for anything that you want to do.
That's great. Thanks, Wayne. And of course, I would absolutely endorse that. Lord Young, I can't see you on screen, but hopefully you're there. Could you share any of your sort of opinions of going through your apprenticeship and just your view on whether it's maybe more frowned upon than a traditional university degree, and if indeed if that thought has now changed, or that those feelings have changed?
Oh, Paul, sorry, Lord Young's had to leave.
Right.
He's got another engagement. Yeah.
Okay, that didn't come up on my screen, so my apologies. It's probably because I'm too busy looking at the questions, Manira. So I'll pose that question to Lord Young. So there we go. So we've got 2 or 3 questions just still to go through, and I'm going to pick on you, Manira, as someone who's not from a healthcare background. How have you found learning about the different job roles, and how do you think it would help you when going into schools to deliver your STEM workshops?
It's actually been quite interesting, because starting the career route map, so originally having a conversation with Nhs Jobs, one of our members, that's where it all started, and then obviously making links with Hefmar and Jeff and Jonathan. It's been like a quite an interesting journey to put together all the job roles, and actually there's so many that I didn't even know existed, and now I'm even thinking, oh, I want to go into, I love the environment and waste one I was really interested in, and sustainability jobs, and yeah, just I loved looking at the clear pathways of where you can go next, because it's not clear in some sectors. So sometimes you might feel stuck thinking, oh, what am I going to do from this? So I think as a young person or a student going into that, you kind of do look ahead and think, I don't want to waste my time doing something if I can't see like an end point. So I think the career route map is good in that sense, to be able to see it very clearly where you want to go, or where you can cross over to another section if you were in estates but you want to go over to capital, or there might be links somewhere where you can see them in the map.
Thanks, Miriam. Actually, that sort of rolls into a question asked by Katie Houlihan, who talks about how does she view or access the interactive version of the career roadmap, which is we've just demonstrated. She can only see the poster in the handouts. The link is directly onto the website, but perhaps Manira, if you could just confirm that.
Yeah, so if you go onto the IHEM website, there's a future leaders section, and then when you pop down the menu, you can see the career route map. And I do believe it is going on the Hefmar website as well. Is that, Jeff, correct me?
It is, yeah. We're just waiting for the latest iteration with the dual branding to go live. It's all sat in the background ready to switch on, and we're ready to go with that now. So yeah, either available through, as Manira says, through the IEM website or the Hefmar website.
That's
yeah,
great.
and feel free to email us in if you need to find a link to it, and feel free to email us. on office@ihem.org.uk, and we can send you the link.
Thanks, Munira. Wayne?
Yeah, Paul, was just something to add that we found, myself and the operational estates manager at Sunderland, we went into one of the schools locally and did the STEM presentation around, it was predominantly around estates and facilities and what the rules were. And something that we found was actually amazing when we were saying to the students in the presentations that we did was around, we're presenting on estates and facilities here today, but there's a raft of opportunities in the NHS. And actually our last slide in our presentation was, this is the link to Nhs Jobs, and this is where you'll find it. And when we finished the presentation, we were approached by the school's careers manager, who wasn't aware of Nhs Jobs as a website and directing their students. And we were absolutely amazed at that because, yeah, doctor, nurse, whatever it may be, we thought that would be a staple direction. So we actually did a little bit of sort of mail shot locally to get out there to say for any of your students, regardless of whether it's estates and facilities that we're interested in, but Nhs Jobs was the place to look for any role what you want. And it would say we were amazed that they didn't know about that locally in the school.
Yeah, it is. It is amazing, really. And I think it's perhaps sometimes we take Nhs Jobs a bit too much for granted, really, and perhaps we're still living in our little bubble of the NHS and not sharing that widely. Interesting point about going into schools, though. Munira, you've been into a few. Just interested in hearing your sort of experience in how well you are received, and how well youngsters receive this sort of information about careers in the NHS.
What we found from feedback actually was that, again, what Wayne has just mentioned, a lot of students like, oh, I didn't know the NHS did apprenticeships. Now I really want to look on them. Where do I go? And I think there was a lot of excitement around apprenticeships rather than going to universities, which is what I found. And there was a lot of conversation because we did like a Q&A after when we went round tables with all the students. I think they just felt like there was other options, but I've noticed in some of the schools as well, they didn't say enough about apprenticeships. So it felt like it was worth, what we were doing was like light bulb moment. It was worth being in the school and doing the workshops and raising the awareness.
And of course, with the IET Faraday Challenge as well, that coming up is going to further strengthen that appetite for coming into the NHS and into engineering amongst some of the other disciplines, which is really good. So thank you. And actually probably must be a really rewarding place to be, actually going into a school and sharing that experience and seeing the appetite of school children switching on to a potential career within the NHS, and obviously from our point of view more within estates and facilities management. So really good.
We scored second on the day, Paul, which we were delighted about, but they said that the Army wins all of the time anyway because they show them pictures all around the world. But she said everybody loses to the Army, so we weren't too downhearted.
Yeah, we'll take that. Second is great to the Army, so they got more boys. So okay, great stuff. Thanks very much. So we've got no other questions that have come in. Just a comment really from our esteemed IHEM Chief Exec, who just wants me to remind you that the NHS are providing free membership to tradespersons working the NHS. And it's just a plea to directors and heads of services that are attending this webinar to just please give your staff the chance to develop and become members within IHEM and HEFMA, and to lock into the whole plethora of information which is on both of those websites, particularly the career map and particularly the training elements to which we are now endorsing. So thanks very much for that timely reminder, Pete. So we've got no further questions. I don't know if any members of our panel want to make any further comments, if I have missed anything. I think this has been a really good session. It would be great, particularly if we can convince Lord Young to continue to lobby government perhaps for for the apprenticeship schemes through the NHS. But I don't. If our panel members have got no further things to say, then I'll bring this session to a close. Just from me, many thanks to our speakers today. Lord Anthony Young of Norwood Green, who's, as I said, a prominent apprentice ambassador, and he is also an IHEAM recently appointed honorary patron. So we must ensure that I mention that. Also to Wayne Carr, Director of Estates and Facilities at Choice, Simon Dennis, Apprenticeships and Procurement Lead at Salisbury's NHS Foundation Trust, Jeff Neild, HEFMA Vice Chair, and of course our own Manera, Project Support Officer for IHEAM. Many thanks for your presentations this afternoon. It leaves me just one last comment to make, and that is to encourage any attendee to visit the IHEAM and HEFMA websites for all of the information to which you've heard today in the 3 sessions to which we have run jointly with HEFMA, or indeed to look on the NHSI Collaboration Hub for any further updates. But we started the day with a national policy perspective with Priyana Izar, the Chief People Officer for NHS England and NHS Improvement, who joined us to give her view of the world and where the NHS was heading in the way of workforce strategy. That was followed by a session around engaging with the EFM workforce. Jeff was on that session, and a really interesting session around how indeed we do that, and we try to do that successfully. I think certainly COVID and the EFM profession standing side by side with our clinical colleagues has indeed, I think, helped our cause. But we still need to keep banging the drum and marketing the EFM workforce profession. And then lastly, this session around apprenticeships and the wider workforce support. And again, my sincere thanks to our presenters here, and we look forward to hopefully developing our workforce even further, and the succession planning in bringing new blood, new staff and apprentices into the EFM profession. So thank you very much for attending, and I'll now bring this session to a close. Thank you very much, and goodbye.